Welcome to the Body Talks with Vera, where we dive deep into movement, strength, and joy at every size. I'm Vera, your host, and each episode we're having real conversations with people who are redefining fitness, confidence, and what it truly means to live in our bodies. Whether we're talking powerlifting, nutrition, running ultra marathons, or radical self love, this is a space where every body has a story. So, we are going to dive into today's episode. So, let's get into it. Today, we have a fat positive and weight neutral outdoor boudoir photographer for all bodies, as well as a queer polyamorous friendly photographer for all families, Laura Brooks. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy you are here. So, I'd love for you to tell me and tell the audience about who you are and what got you into photography.
Yeah, I'm Laura Shianthe, and I am an outdoor boudoir photographer as well as a family photographer. And I live in Seattle with my partner and my dog. And I love swimming. You can catch me at the community center pool 4 times a week or so. My first paid gig was when I was 12 years old because I grew up in a very small town and a very religious small town. And so someone in the church got married and they hired me as their wedding photographer, which is horrible for them, but it was great for me. So I've just been interested in photography ever since, but it's mostly been a hobby. I didn't put a lot of thought or intentionality in like branding or consistency. I never really thought of that until I started my own business about 2 years ago.
And of course, if you are listening in, I do suggest you check out the YouTube video so you can actually see Laura's dog in the background having a little nap, being the cutest little thing ever.
He's exhausted from all the napping that he does. It's a hard life for him.
It is a hard life. It definitely is. I would feel the same if I were napping all day, just getting pets and
That'd be
love.
so nice. Yeah.
Uh, so, why was it important for you to create a space that welcomes queer and poly families?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have noticed in my own looking for photographers journey for my partner and there I am surrounded by such a beautiful queer community. So I'm kind of like in this insular bubble, I guess, in some ways. And so I know of queer photographers, but I also had a hard time finding folks that represented like either fatness and or queerness, especially both, um, as photographers. And I have so many people that I love who are polyamorous, and I am a big fan of chosen family. I don't really fuck with my biological family. I mean, shout out to my mom. I still talk to my mom. But in general, I don't really have a relationship with my biological family. So it was important to me as an adult to find my chosen family. And I think the word family has a lot of weight to it, especially family portraits or family
Yeah.
photography as a whole. So it was important to me to, one, include the people that I love who are polyamorous, but also have like a really wide definition of photography for families. Because to me, family could be chosen friends, that could be chosen family, that could be, having one or multiple partners, that could be, adults and their dogs, that could be kids and their adults or whatever that is. But I was a social worker for a long time, and so I try to think of like who is missing from the conversation, and I could not find some polyamorous friendly family photographers. So I really wanted to call that out. That's not my primary audience. Like, that's not like the people who hire me for sessions per se, but it's still important for me to call it out as something that I do because it is so hard to find.
Oh my gosh, definitely. And I do love that you're kind of bringing up the topic of chosen family because I do think when I think of family photography, I do think of that nuclear family of like mom, dad, brother, sister, kind of very like stereotypical. But to be offering photography and family photography in this way and using that language to say, no, it's whoever you want it to be. And it really kind of opens up that world with I think a way that is just so beautiful because so many people do kind of think the same way I do where it's, "Oh, family photographer," it's like, that awkward 90s
Yeah,
family
right?
photos you got.
Yeah.
right? But it's actually something can be so much more and can showcase a familial love in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Sure. So, but like you said, it is not kind of your main
yeah,
audience. I would, say that your main audience is what you do with outdoor boudoir, which I think is a very specific concept that I absolutely love because I think of boudoir, but not outdoor boudoir.
yeah,
So, what drew you to setting that as kind of the primary outdoor boudoir instead of like studio or in-house boudoir?
yeah. Well, I think my love for nature, first of all, so I'm fat. And so I work with a lot of folks who are plus size to some degree, because again, it can be hard to find someone that looks like us that knows how to photograph our bodies, which it shouldn't be hard, but it is. And when we look at nature, we're often admiring like the big things. We're looking at big mountains or big trees or big fields of moss or fields of flowers or whatever. Like when we see bigness in nature, we admire it and love it and just are so inspired by it. And somehow that does not translate to our bodies. And I'm saying somehow, like we know that there's so much capitalism and like bullshit around how we view our bodies. It's like there are reasons why
Mhm.
we see why. um,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
but for like outdoor boudoir, when I started well, first of all, I want to just say I didn't make up outdoor boudoir. I mean, a lot of boudoir photographers offer like seasonal outdoor boudoir. And I have a friend, B, who did an outdoor boudoir session for myself before I started my business. And so there's lots of people before me who have done this concept. But for me, it's my main uh, type of boudoir because I love nature. I've been wanting when I was starting my business, I was craving being back in the outdoor community. I did the 52 hike challenge a couple of years ago. I loved it. I did like 67 hikes that year, which was
Oh
wild.
my
And it was so much fun and I loved it, but I also hated it and was totally burnt out from hiking and like doing intense things outside.
yeah,
So when I started my business, I was really at this point of like craving being outside, but not wanting to do things that weren't fun or like the type 2 fun. So it's really important to me. A lot of folks maybe assume that the outdoor boudoir there's required to be this like adventurous or like intense hike or be. And I really want to, there's like adventure photography that does require a lot of strenuous activity, but it was important to me to make our spaces accessible or as accessible as possible for folks of all fitness level sizes or fitness levels.
yeah.
So the locations that I choose, I work with every client individually about, what works for them in their body. But anyways, I just love nature. I love being outside. I also like feel the most free and the most calm when I'm outside. Whenever I'm feeling really
Mhm.
overwhelmed, I remember um, there was one day I was doing some location scouting and I was just feeling really overwhelmed. And the second that I stood outside of my car and like sat outside with my dog, I felt immediately calmer, and so that type of energy is, like, what I wanna bring into my photo sessions because I want people to
Yeah.
feel not only present in their bodies and, like, good in their bodies, but I also want our photo session time to be a time where we're reflecting on being grateful for our bodies, and our bodies just do so much that we take for granted or that we
Mhm.
critique, or that we think it should perform or look how it used to.
Yeah.
So it's important to me to be outside in nature where we very rarely judge how nature is so different from each other. We rarely judge the size. If anything, we celebrate how big nature is. We celebrate the
Yeah.
growth. We celebrate the change. So to me, it's a mix of a lot of different things, but I just love it so
Mm.
much.
I love that because ditto to loving nature. I am such a nature person. Like, that is why I call my on-demand library the garden. Like,
Mm,
I do want us to be out there. I want us to
yeah,
be cultivating and growing in, my case, our bodies through
yeah,
flexibility. But I think just to even be in nature and to be surrounded by such like something that can really put us in a state of
yeah,
awe because really nature is incredible what it has given us and what it continues to give us, and that it's just being. It just is. And we are not really judging it. We're admiring it. We're taking photos of random trees and, as kids, we're taking the paper and the crayon up to like the tree bark
Right,
and like getting that imprint to say like, oh, look at this, or like seeing a bug and being like, oh, how cool.
right.
Like we're not judging it. We're admiring it even though how different it
Yeah,
is. And I think that's so lovely to kind of put our bodies in that space where it's like, okay, we're admiring everything in this space, ourselves
yeah,
included.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, how do you help your clients feel comfortable and empowered in front of the camera, especially for fat folks when society has done way too much to bring us down?
Whew, that is such a good question. I never promise safety, which I think can help
Mm,
build some trust, but I never promise to be a safe person. I also never promise to bring folks to a safe place, and not in a way of scaring or intimidating people or, misleading people. I just never safety means so many different things to so many different people that and,
mhm.
before we even get outside to the photo session, I meet with everybody in person and we talk about safety, especially for my boudoir clients. We talk about physical and emotional safety in particular, because
Yeah.
unless we rent a private outdoor space, which is totally possible, and I also do indoor boudoir as well, but especially for outdoor boudoir, if it's on public land, we're going over how to take care of the land, how are we good stewards of the land, but we're also
Yeah.
acknowledging that there are other people admiring this gorgeous view. And as much as I try to take people in locations at times and days where folks are it's like the lowest traffic of people, we always safety plan first because I want folks to feel as safe and as comfortable as possible. And so a
Yeah.
lot of that work happens even before we step outside together, where we're talking about like what are some things that they want to highlight, either of their
Yeah.
body or just their personality. And
Mm,
we kind of do that planning ahead of time so that when we're outside, there's some kind of, I don't want to say understanding, but there's some kind of acknowledgement, I guess, of what the vibe will be. And then even
yeah.
before the camera comes out or is turned on, I like to do a little mindfulness moment with all my clients. And so I
Mm,
give folks two options. The first option is running your hands over your body and thanking that specific part of your body. So whether it's legs for walking, arms for moving, bellies for just being sexy. But the other option is taking deep breaths and thinking about what you want to embrace as you inhale and think about what you want to leave behind as you exhale. And
oh, yeah.
I have found if it's even one breath, like can be such a change to the tone and the vibe. And like there's such calmness when we connect with our breath and we connect with where our bodies are at that day. I also try to, and I'm not perfect at this, but I try my very best to ask, like, how are knees feeling? Does it feel okay to be on knees? Or, how does this area feel? Does that feel safe to get to? Does that feel safe to do this movement or pose? And then throughout the session, I really try to focus on how you're feeling in your body and what feels good in your body. And then the other part of feeling comfortable or safe, because I've hired boudoir photographers over the years, which is, I bring in that experience here. But in my experience, when I don't see the images, I I don't want to say lose confidence, but it's hard to keep confidence or
Mm,
it's hard to know what the other person's seeing. And so along the way,
for sure.
especially with boudoir, I'm showing folks the images because there's already a power dynamic between me being behind the camera. Oh,
Yeah.
that's the other thing. I try to wear lingerie with folks. I mean, I ask folks if they're comfortable, but I wear lingerie with folks outside.
Love that.
Yeah, just regardless. I mean, I've had folks do more mask. I've had some men work with me. And so, I just offer to wear lingerie for everybody because, yeah, it can just feel extra vulnerable. I've done outdoor boudoir on the other end and already
Yeah.
outside in the public eye. Um,
Yeah.
anyways, I try really hard to like make sure that folks feel as comfortable as possible, but I never want to overpromise that everything will go perfectly and fine. Although I will
Mhm.
say, and I am very surprised that this hasn't happened yet, but I have not had someone interrupt me during a session, family boudoir, anything. I've never had someone interrupt me during a session to say something negative. I've had it now 4 or 5 times where someone has interrupted me during a session and like said like, "You look amazing. We love that you're doing this. Like, this is such a great idea," whatever. which is very wholesome and unexpected. But so at some point, someone will interrupt the session and say something negative. And we talk about that during the planning session and what we plan to
Yeah.
do. But
Well,
yeah,
I do I do really love, like, even though you are, coming to your client saying, "I can't guarantee this," it really seems like you are putting safety at the forefront in multiple ways. Like, in that emotional way, in that physical way, like, in every kind of facet, it seems like you are really thinking about safety and how to make sure that person feels safe, and I do think yes, because you are in a very, very vulnerable position to not only be outdoors for a photo shoot, but to be doing a boudoir and wearing lingerie or wearing just very little and then being outdoors
we
in potentially a public
totally.
space. And I do love that bring out the offer to also wear
Yeah.
lingerie to kind of give that, again, another layer of
Wow.
safety to the person you're
Mhm.
photographing, because then they're like, okay, like it's not just me who's kind of putting myself out
Yeah.
there. Like there's someone else there, and it's also the person who is behind the camera doing that.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, to show the photos in between, I really love because I have had a few photo shoots just for my fitness brand, and I will see no photos at all at any point until it's all
Yeah.
done. And that whole time leading up, I think, okay, well, all these photos are shit. They're terrible. They're going to be awful. They're so bad. And like, I start
Yeah.
spiraling. And I do love when I've had photographers who show me photos, they're like, "Oh my god, look at this photo." And I'm like, "Okay," like, I know the direction it's going
Yeah.
in, and to see the photographer share that
Yeah.
enthusiasm, I think it's so important because again, it's that layer of vulnerability. You're putting yourself out there to be in front of a camera, and so many people feel so uncomfortable in front of a
Yeah.
camera, and I do think from what I've seen, like, even online, like, fat people are kind of been told, like, society has always told us, like, we gotta hide ourselves, but now we're in a position where we can actually show off
Yeah.
ourselves, and I think that's really
Yeah.
beautiful to kind of be like, "No, like, we're putting safety first because of how important it
Yeah.
is." Like, there's nothing that comes above that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point. I feel like especially growing up fat and chubby, like I was always in the back row or like hiding behind someone or something.
Yeah.
And just
Mhm.
this idea of like trying to make myself smaller for the camera
Yeah.
and not be seen, which, understand and also as a child. And anytime someone calls me to talk about boudoir, especially if in a larger body, it is so powerful to me that and, like, badass, even if they don't choose to go with me. Like, there are phenomenal photographers in the area, and I just want everyone to have that experience. I don't care who you hire. And, yeah, like, it just is so badass to me that people are, like, wanting to take up more space. Whether or not I can share
Yeah.
those images, I have a couple of image release options because I want folks to feel fully in control of where their images go or how they're shared. And there was one other thing that I was gonna say, I can't remember, but anyways, yeah, I it's important to me that folks feel as comfortable as possible and, like, are taking up space. Oh, that was the other thing, is that I don't have time limits on my sessions. Understand why
Mm.
other folks do, but I also think some folks want more time to warm up. I've also had
Yeah.
some folks request, like, "Can we, like, grab a picnic or, like, have some snacks before the session just to, like, warm up each
Mm.
other even more,"
Yeah.
which is great. I've also had a session where we, like, took images, we paused and sat down on a rock and ate snacks, and then we kept going. Just 'cause, like,
Yeah.
so anyways, I think it's more important to have folks feel as comfortable as possible and that they feel like they're in charge of the session because they are.
Yeah.
That to me is more important than having these rigid rules and
Mhm.
can help folks feel more comfortable. Again, it doesn't guarantee
Yeah.
comfort or safety for everyone, but and
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Has there ever been a client who made you rethink how you approach your work, kind of maybe in the beginning of your photography journey?
oh, that is a great question. I feel like I'm saying that to all of your questions. Has there been a
Mhm.
client? So I ask for feedback for after all of my sessions. And it was super helpful in the beginning when folks just gave really honest feedback. And I'm someone that really appreciates giving feedback is not always easy. So I always appreciate when someone gives a critique, whether it's more direct or kind of cushioned. Like, it doesn't matter to me because
Mhm.
either way that can be hard um, to
Oh, yeah.
give. So I really appreciate it. There was one person, and I think at the beginning I was more concerned about um less about like the amount of different poses. I was more concerned with the experience of connecting with our bodies. And I had one person who had just made a comment that they wanted more diversity in posing. And I really appreciated that because had not been on my mind. So
Yeah.
since then, that kind of helped change my approach. But I don't know that I can think, well, the other thing, actually, maybe the bigger one, is I did a mini session. I've done one official mini session uh, day, and that was in the very beginning, and I hated it. And not because the people were lovely and like it was
Yeah.
at a pool and it was so much like fun in theory, but I just felt
Yeah.
so rushed and I felt like I didn't have enough time for
Mhm.
everyone. And
Yeah.
I don't like to be rushed for no reason. And this felt like, why are we rushing for no reason?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Anyway, so it felt like way too much pressure, and it just anytime you have to work quickly, it's not gonna be your best work, and so it's not a
Yeah.
reflection on how wonderful these folks were, how they showed up. But I
Mhm.
did have one person who was not in love with their images, and, like, understandably so, we did not have enough time together, but that feedback and I had already felt this way immediately after, was like, "Oh, I didn't quite love that, I don't know that I'll do that again," and then I got feedback
Yeah.
that, well, that person didn't love any of their images, um, and I
Mhm.
just was like, "Oh, I'm never doing this again." I hate minis. And then
Yeah.
group session last June, I think it was, and it
Mhm.
wasn't a mini, but it felt like a similar vibe, and so again, was kind of just like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this is not my best work." And I love some of those
Yeah.
images, and all of the people showed up, like, it was a successful event, and I had so much fun. And the,
Yeah.
like, specific photography, I, like, know what I can do, and so
Mhm.
it was a reminder of, like, "Okay, this is not I don't like to be rushed for no reason." So that's also why I don't have any time limits
Yeah.
on my sessions because I work at
Yeah.
a slower pace, and I would rather work well with the people I'm working with than feel like I'm on this arbitrary time frame. So those were
Mm.
both
Yeah.
earlier on, both the mini session and the feedback about, like, having diversity in posing. I is not an issue anymore, and I just don't do minis anymore because they are chaotic, and
Yeah.
I don't like them. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they sound chaotic. I do love how it kind of played into that now you don't really have these time limits.
Mhm.
And I also love that you choose that you're saying like I don't want to rush.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because I'm reading books right now on rest,
Mhm.
but I do love that, especially when, we're in this culture that is like, we have to grind, like
To
girl boss this and capitalism that. Like, you're saying, like, no, we're gonna take our time.
Yep.
We're gonna chill out a bit. We're gonna get comfortable. We're going to, warm up to whatever we're about to
Mhm.
do. And we'll go at a pace that feels good and we'll end when it feels
Yeah.
right. And I do love that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I did an event this last weekend doing, like, professional portraits for folks, and that was just like, all of the money was donated to a local organization called Lavender Project, who supports primarily Black trans folks, and they do excellent work. They provide housing and movement lawyering and all the things. I could, like, gush on them for forever. But in that, like, that was a chaotic moment or day that felt good because it was, um I think because instead of, like, charging people like, for Fat Lesk, I also gift the, like, quick like, sessions for the Fat Lesk performers, and those because it's a gift where I'm like, "Okay, it doesn't quite matter what the end
Yeah.
result is per se, like, this is a gift and it's a bonus." That
Yeah.
feels so much better than charging people a little bit of money for an astronomical amount of work. Like,
Totally.
chaotic and rushed, and so, I'm like, in some ways, the
Yeah.
chaos is good and, like, works well with my ADHD brain, but I love that, yes, this, like, connection to rest, I didn't make that connection yet, so I'm like, "Oh, I like that." like the slowness
Yeah.
and the like, we're not going to rush because we don't have to rush if there's not a
Oh,
real deadline.
yeah, exactly. Has your own relationship with your body changed through your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is going to sound so cliche, and I really hope you believe me. But every single person that I have the honor of photographing, I just think is stunning. Like, incredibly beautiful people.
Yeah.
And having so much admiration for the people that I work with and how they look, I think has given me the freedom or the permission, or I don't know what that word is, but I have given myself so much more compassion. And especially seeing my body, I think the other part too is like I'm in lingerie in public, and like a couple of years ago, I wouldn't go to the grocery store because my anxiety was so high. Like it just is like such a pivot to where
Mm, okay.
my brain and my body is. It's like my body has never been
Yeah.
bigger. And like I have also never felt so like settled in my body before, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I don't know. I have the other part of that too is the way that I structure my business is we create physical artwork together because I'm a big believer that the photo session itself can be completely transformative. And when I get a bunch of digital images back and they sit in my phone, I had a hard time. They just get lost in my phone with all the other. So now I have images on my wall as well. Or you can kind of see some in the back, and I have some on this wall here of my own
Yeah.
body. And it is a visual reminder every day of not only like how powerful my body is and how incredible and strong and badass and sexy, but it also is a reminder, it like pulls me back to a time where I felt so good in my body that it helps
Yeah.
like get out of those like bad body image days. And as a reminder to me that those bad body image days are temporary, that they don't have to last for forever. I think I just have a lot more compassion with how I feel about my body. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we all have bad days. We all have hard parts about like I, as much as I'm like, yes, love your body, that's also like so much pressure. And like, so I'm a big believer
Yeah.
that you don't have to love your body in all the ways at all the times. Um, and
Yeah.
there's like kind of this, like in the, I don't know, portrait world, there's like the shugs of the world that are like radical self embrace, love, like embrace the belly, celebrate the belly and the rolls and all the things, which is phenomenal and so needed. We need more of them in the world. And then there's like this complete 180 to like classic boudoir, which is really posing to like make your body appear more aligned with what our current beauty structure is. And that's not all of
Mm,
boudoir, but I think more classic boudoir is like posing in a way that like makes some parts of you bigger and some parts of you smaller, and it feels more
yeah.
like optical illusion. And I like to sit
Mhm.
somewhere in the middle because some folks are excited about this radical self-acceptance and some folks aren't and like want more like of the classic posing. And to me there's no judgment on whatever folks want to choose or where they're at in their own personal journey, but to me I've in my own relationship to my body, I've like played with both and have a lot more patience with where I'm at for the day, or just, kind of the like thing that turned around how I view my body or what I decide to wear, specifically swimsuits, is like my body's going to be the same if I wear like a black oversized sweatshirt and sweat. And
Mm,
it's going to be the same body size as if I wear a string bikini. So, like, why am I
yeah.
trying to hide my body? Why don't I just wear whatever I want to wear? I
Yeah.
have felt that many years ago, that like kind of that I feel like that attitude or that like mind shift changed so much for me. And so since doing photography, I feel like it's just been strengthened of like, I'm going to wear lingerie. that feels good on my body, but I also have so much of my body out in the world. And I have the biggest, I guess, change is I feel a lot more at peace with my body.
Yeah. I love what you said a little bit earlier when you kinda said, like, it feels you feel settled in your body. I really love that and wanna just kinda take a moment to feel that because to feel settled is to feel, at peace and to trust. And I think, that can change every day,
Sure.
right? Like you're saying, it sometimes you're not gonna have the best body image day, but then you could kinda remind yourself to moments where you do feel at peace and you kinda bring yourself slowly back to that baseline where you feel settled. Again, I do really love that. Like, for me, I also like to visualize a lot. I'm a very visual person, so I always think of, like, sand sitting at the bottom of the ocean, and I wanna switch a little bit to that topic of water because you do host the monthly Fat Swim in Seattle, and I know you love being in the water. I know you love swimming like you were saying before, and I'm really curious, what brought you to start hosting this?
Ooh. So many things. Hosting Fat Swim has been honestly a dream of mine for a long time now. Like I said earlier, like I struggle to go to the grocery store like fully clothed. And it wasn't until someone went with me to a pool that I started going regularly. And now I go multiple times a week and I wear my bikinis and I'm like fully out, out there, just being seen and perceived, which is wild. Shout out to Lux Pro. And hosting Fat Swim was kind of a compilation of a couple things. When I started my business, I had some really big shifts in my community, in my own life. And it really made me reconsider how I show up to my friendships, how I show up in community. I was conflating the two. I was thinking community and friendship as the same. And so I really had to deconstruct what friendship meant to me and how I show up in that. And then also finding a larger community that maybe I'm not connecting with personally or deeply with everybody in that community, but that I have a place to land. And so for all of those things, that was kind of like the prep work, if you will. And then I went to visit a friend and did their boudoir down in the Bay Area. And she took me to a local fat swim. They do it every week. They've been doing it for like 40 years.
Oh
So
my
it was also
god.
a reminder of like, oh my God, this like fat liberation movement has been here for a long time. Sometimes I forget. It feels
Yeah.
like we have barely started,
Yeah.
but it was a beautiful reminder to be like, there have been people that have gone before me. We've been in this for a long time. So that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I knew that I couldn't do it weekly. I mean, shout out to them. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a lot of work, and to do it for 40 years is so
Right?
impressive. I love that. I'm definitely gonna have to look it
Right?
up.
Yeah, it's called Making Waves, I think, or Making Waves. So when I came back, I that was January of last year, 2 years ago, I can't quite remember, maybe 2 years ago. And when I came back, I just made it happen. I just, like, threw it
Yeah.
out there kind of as an idea, just to be like, "Oh, is there interest?" And there was a lot of interest, which I am not surprised by. I mean, I think universally all fat people love the water, um, because it's the one place we don't fight gravity, and it's the one place where we are feeling, like, so, um free of our bodies or like free from gravity, which is so beautiful and lovely. I just called a bunch of community centers and made it all happen. And my style of hosting anything is very much like my house is your house. Like, please be as comfortable as you can. My mom is from both my parents are from the Midwest, and I have friends from the Midwest who are so much better at hosting than me. Their style is very much like, I don't know, a little bit more formal, I would say, and like doing a lot of work
Mhm.
for the other folks. And there's so much beauty in that as well. I really wanted Fat Swim to be in a place where, like, 40 years from now, folks can come visit and be like, "Wow, this has been happening for 40 years."
Yeah.
So, I want it to be really low key, and yeah, it's just kind of evolved from there. It's mostly at indoor community centers, and then we had someone in our community who has an outdoor pool reach out, and They host it in the summertime outside, which is great, and it just kind of evolves, like, people are wanting an activity, and so now there's someone who's doing a little gentle movement and a little dance moment, and
Yeah.
yeah, we just had our first family-friendly fat swim this last weekend, so it definitely is
Oh,
evolving as we go and just trying to learn, like, what this community specifically is wanting and needing, but
yeah.
I love it so much.
Wow.
It's so fun.
I'm definitely gonna have to come out there one time and join because that sounds like so much
Yeah.
fun. There is like in Toronto, there is some of my friends actually started a fat swim. They've only had one event so far last year, but it was such a smash hit. I am really hoping they do some more this year because it just went so
Yeah.
well. So many people came out. It was so gorgeous to see so many different types of bodies there, just enjoying it was, like, really hot day, it was, like, in July, it was so lovely, and so I love that you're doing this over in Seattle, and I would love to know, like, are there any standout moments at Fat Swim that really encapsulate how or why spaces like this are so important?
Ooh. The first thing that's coming to mind is last year we did a clothing optional fat swim, and yeah, not to, like, toot my own horn or whatever the phrase is, but I was
Toot
late.
away.
You said toot away. Toot toot. I was late. So I was like 30 minutes late to this swim or whatever it was, and I was exhausted. I remember this day. I was so tired. And I showed up and everyone still had their clothes on, which is like fine because clothing optional means you can keep it on. But
Yeah,
I just immediately was like, I don't want to wear a swimsuit. Like I want to be naked. And so I just remember coming in and like immediately taking off my clothes and jumping in. And then I think at any gathering, like, especially as someone who, like, emails, as much as I'm like, I'm not the leader, like, I do think sending out the email, there is a power dynamic there, and I coordinate a lot of the things. But as much as I, like, want Fat Swim to be a community-led event, I think there's some acknowledgement of, like, I don't know what to call it. My coordination. My coordination
yeah,
efforts, but I remember just, like, immediately taking off my clothes, and then everyone kind of followed suit, and then it just became, like, a whole naked parade and party, and it was just, like, so
yeah,
delightful and fun, and I just remember
yeah,
people feeling so excited to just be naked and have it not be a big deal. Like, it just wasn't an issue, like,
yeah,
it wasn't I think that's the thing I love about Fat Swim is the irony of calling it out as a fat swim, and yet in in that space, like, my fatness doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we're all fat, it's like, it just doesn't
yeah,
cross my mind. I'm not thinking about my body,
yeah,
and I think someone made that comment too recently where they were like, "Yeah, I had to really make an effort to, like, know people's names because usually I remember people's names because it's, like, the few of us who are the fat people at an event or a work or
yeah,
whatever." So I think just, like, being, like, fully naked and, like, it's not weird, it wasn't sexualized, it's not anything other than just, like, freedom. Like, it just, like, from
yeah,
clothing being irritating and that, like, sensitivities, like, on our bodies, but
mhm,
also just, like, being in water and, like, being in community, it's just so beautiful.
yeah.
This summer, we are
Oh,
doing 2 a month through June and September, 1 clothing on, 1 clothing optional because of that, because it's so fun and so good. Um,
love that.
yeah.
It's amazing. So, what is some advice you would give to someone who wants to join Fat Swim in Seattle or a similar event in their
Mhm.
city, but feels nervous about just showing up?
Yeah. Firstly, I would say that's so normal. Like, it's so normal to feel nervous about doing something new in general, but
Yeah.
especially something like putting yourself out there, wearing a swimsuit to a place that's new is a lot. I think if someone wants to plan this in a different city, I would say connect with other agencies or groups or orgs that are doing something similar or like find your community. Like, who is that community? Is there anything similar going on right now? Can you like coordinate or like support or collaborate with them? And then the
Yeah.
second thing is like ask folks what they want. And it's kind of hard to, I guess, decide which advice you're going to take and which you're not, but look for themes. I mean, get a group of folks if you need to like kind of go through that or help plan or kind of carry that administrative burden. And if someone's new and is like thinking about going but is nervous, I would say connect, bring a friend. In our Fat Swim, caregivers of any size are welcome. And caregiver, I'm not asking or like, no one's interrogating why a straight size person might be there. They might get some looks on, why are you here? But you're not there likely is not going to be a confrontation on why they're there. So if that's a need on like a mental health standpoint, like that's welcomed. And I don't police that. I'm not, people have asked and I've just given the very frustrating answer of like, if you feel like it's a need, bring, but I'm also not going to say yes or no, because that's a very personal choice. And also just like in general, I would say, you know, your own like coping skill. This is like very social worker of me. I used to be a social worker for 10 years, but I'm like, it's nerve-wracking to do a lot of things. So like what's worked for you in the past? For me, it's bringing somebody. For me, it's checking out the area beforehand. For me,
Yeah.
it's, messaging the organizer. I also stand out in front for about 15 minutes just to welcome everybody and say hi to folks.
Yeah.
So, if you're ever nervous about coming to my Fat Swim or our Fat Swim in Seattle, like just know that I'm there to say hi and kind of direct you and tell you about the physical space, where to go, what locker rooms to use, and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say take care
Oh,
as
I
much as
love that.
possible, but do it anyways.
Yes, yes, do it anyways. I will say, like, for myself, that is the thing. It's bring a friend, scope out the area before. I'm a big fan of using Google and like just finding out all I can about the facilities, no matter what. Like, even if it's like a random store I'm
Yeah,
going to, I am on Google like Street View, seeing what's around, knowing my area.
I love it.
But then, yeah, like talking to the organizer, I think is always really great because they are going to have the most insight for
Yep.
you. And it's not like they're closed off and not going to want to talk to you. They will want you to be there. They're trying to welcome you and create a space for community that you are a part
Yeah.
of. So they are going to be friendly and
Yeah.
hopeful. And if they aren't, then, well, maybe they're not the safest person to be going to an event run by. Like that is totally up to the individual, but that's how I would
Yeah.
personally see it too. If right?
Also, I will say, just for another perspective, because sometimes it can be all consuming to think about how you are feeling about showing up to the event. But as an organizer, I want people to show up. Like, it can
Yeah.
feel like I'm putting a lot of time and effort into creating this event. And, it's like throwing a birthday party. Like, no one wants to throw a birthday party and no one shows up. So I
Yeah.
am also like, it's vulnerable on my end to be like, here's the thing. Do you want to come to my thing? So
Yeah.
also if that's, and not to say you have to come because the organizer might feel sad if you don't, like that shouldn't motivate. But also like any nerves that you have is shared. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm also
Yeah.
like, if no one shows up, like that would feel very sad and I would feel embarrassed and all of those things. But I also don't do it for me. Do it because you want to come. But also know that, like,
No.
your feeling is normal and I also feel that. Like, I also am hoping that folks wanna come and show up.
Yeah, I'm gonna write in my phone, note to self, must come to Fat Swim or Laura said.
Correct. Number 1 motivator, yes, correct.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
I
But
can't be sad, that's very bad. Never let me be sad.
yeah.
Just kidding.
Oh my gosh. Laura, thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation. It was so much fun. If people want to learn more about you and work with you or even join Fat Swim, how can they find you?
Yes, you can find me on TikTok, on YouTube, and Instagram, and I'm newly on Pinterest at laurabrooks.photography. So you're welcome to follow me on all of those things. Also, you can go to my website to sign up for Fat Swim emails. I don't share too many details on the internet because people are weird on the internet and safety is important.
Mhm.
So you have to sign up for the emails to get all the details. And that's on my website. That's laurabrooks.art, E-R-T.
Amazing. I will have that, of course, all linked in the show notes. And Laura, one final question. If you could share one affirmation we could all practice to show some kindness to our bodies, what would it be?
Yeah, I have two.
Ooh,
One
okay.
is I am loved in the body that I have today. And the second one is I look good enough to be remembered.
Ooh, ooh, I love those. Those are so good. Okay, say them back to me. I wanna let it sink in.
Mhm. The first one is I am loved in the body that I have today.
I am loved in the body I have
Yeah.
today.
And then the second one is you or I look good enough to be remembered.
You and I look good enough to be
Got me
remembered.
there. Yep.
Those are beautiful. Laura, again, thank you so much for joining for this lovely, lovely conversation on the Body Talks. And thank you to everyone tuning in. Remember to drink some water, do something kind for your body today, and I will catch you on the next one.